This is Arc
This
Analysis.
this is Arc Analysis.
This
This
is
is
Arc Analysis.
Arc Analysis. Sis.
Silverwing, the graphic novel. Published in 2023. Written by Kenneth Oppel, drawn by Christopher Steininger. Except the books that it's based on came out in the 90s.
That's what I was going to say. I had no idea it was released in 2023. This seems of the 90s, right? Like that's the one thing we were talking about.
Yeah, it is of the 90s, but I think it was 97, but this is the first time it's actually been adapted to graphic novel form. There's a bunch of there's like 4 or 5 books. There's like Silverwing. Oh shit, I had them all written down. I don't know.
You had one job.
I had one job, yeah. It was like Firewing or something. I don't know. I think there's 4.
Oh, so like natural adventures based on what we learned from this one.
I guess so. I think there's Silverwing, and then the sequel is the continuation of it.
Okay, right. Which they kind of set up. They end the book, which is amazing that they ended it, because that's the one takeaway that I had with you. Is like, I didn't think they were going to pull it out in the end, right? Like, there's a certain moment when you're reading the comic, because it doesn't break down in chapters like we've seen in other works that are close to this. It's all one kind of story, and the flow and the pacing of it is so great that at a certain point it looked like he was free falling to get to the finish, and I didn't think he was going to pull up. I thought it was just going to be a crash and over. But they pull up, and it's a very like 90s type adventure movie ending, which I appreciate. But then, as you were saying, they give us that open ending. Hey, we can come back for more adventures. I was like, you know what? I would come back for more adventures.
Yeah, you're right. And it's so Silverwing is the first one, and then there's Sunwing. These are the novels. Sunwing which is the sequel, and then there's Firewing, there's Firewing. Yes, and then the airline. Yeah, and then Firewing's the third one, but Firewing is about like the next generation,
sure,
like the sons of or the children of this one. And so, and then the fourth one is Darkwing. Duck.
I feel like we have to cover them just for the puns about me making the entire episode.
Darkwing Duck, and I think that's actually a throwback to so it's really just the 1-2.
The cover of the Darkwing also says, "When there's trouble, call DW." So we have to read that one.
Actually, the tagline on it, it's funny. It says, "Let's get busy."
Damn it, you got a better pull than I did. All right. You've won this round. So.
Sunwing, the sequel, is actually in works to come out this year as a trade as well. Because like you were saying, trades like this usually are broken out in chapters. This one is not. It's just one big trade. But
which I feel works. It works for it so much. Maybe at some point we'll... Yeah, I was going to say, sorry, finish your comment about what you like about.
No, I was just going to say it's smooth, and you mentioned it's very like 90s, and it is. It's got that adventure feel. We were talking about before the camera. Sorry, I'm a little bit faded tonight. Before the mics went on, before the mics zooted, before the mics went on, it's very like Chronicles of Nim and Five Goes West, and what was the pull you had?
Brave Little Toaster, Fern Gully, I think I said.
Fern Gully, yeah.
And then most recently, if you've been listening to what we do, we read a book called with Wick. I can't remember the name of the book, but I just remember Wicks and Atlas and
Scurry.
And Scurry is such a child of this book. Whichever one came first, they're both siblings.
This one came first.
Scurry is definitely in the bloodline of Silverwing, and you can see it, right? Like, it's not hard to find a little woodland creature and show them the perspective of their world, because obviously it's bigger because they're smaller, but an adventure takes place in. What I love about this book, which I feel works for it, is the no chapters, because there's rarely any moments of stop. They're always moving somewhere, whether the artwork shows it or they're constantly flying. There's really no moment to slow down and really catch your bearings. Like, there's sleep moments, and those are like the most amount of breath that you get, but I'm glad there's not a lot of them. Like, this guy's Silverwing's always flying somewhere, and it's kind of amazing for the way that there's storytelling with it.
The story here, okay? This is a bit lengthy because I went into detail, but I think it's important. So in this world, the bats and owls slash birds came to a forced agreement that birds can use the skies in the day and bats can only use it at night. And there would be no crossover, with the owls upholding the law. So the owls are like 5-0. So when a young bat from the Silverwing colony tries to prove his worth by staying up late enough to get a glimpse of the sun, it sets off a chain of events that makes the story of the book unfold, which ends up being like the beginning. The owls burn down their nest and
Right.
force the colony to migrate to the south earlier than expected. And then along the way, he comes across pigeons, rats,
Yep.
other bats. Adventure ensues, trying to find his colony or trying to move south to his colony.
Just you explaining the story and giving the listeners what it's about. So many things popped in my mind, especially scenes from the book, especially when the owls are coming with fire. And the way that they did it, it's so good. It's so like rewarding in the fact of like, oh, it's a war. But I thought about the fact that what are they going to do when it's like if we were going to write a spinoff, I think our take would be what happens in a solar eclipse or like a lunar eclipse where like the night is day and day is night. They both head into the sky at the same time. Yeah. Because that's such a simple sort of line in the sand, but it sets the tone for everything you're going to get in this book. Like so much motivation of how our characters move forward is because they can't do it during the day. And that changes the entire world that they have to deal with because they're doing it at night, right? So such a little note, but makes a difference when you start reading. And again, the color palette that they're using, you get to see a lot of this world in night, except those moments that you don't. And then those scenes are so much more stark because it's something that you're not used to. And there's no moment to stop and kind of catch your breath. It's just like, oh no, it's day and we got to go now, right? There's certain moments where they have to fly in day and what happens, right? Like this is, I'm pretty sure we're not trying to spoil this bad boy, right?
I don't really want to spoil everything, but we can talk about
it. There's a lot of
and
and so much happens, right? Like this is a world that you definitely get immersed into, and to its credit, you get swallowed into this world, and everything is kind of believable, down to like the beefs that they have with the different species for different reasons. Like I love the stuff that happens with the rats, and the rats are just like
the rats are us. Yeah,
and just their whole lore of just like we're under here, like we're watching you, kind of stuff, and like we don't like you, and we're not supposed to like you, right? So, and then the paranoia that each species sends to the other to be like, well, don't fuck with these guys, can't fuck with these guys, right?
That's why I like the pigeons, because the pigeons are like, you see pigeons in real life, and they're just kind of like dopey,
right?
And in this book, they are kind of dopey, but they also are
angry,
very
aggressive, yes. Yeah. And like there's a pack mentality of like, yo, we gonna get all of you like birds of a feather sort of stuff, right? Like good feathers. It was great.
That's really cool. Something else I appreciate too is so the main bat Shade, he breaks the rules by staying up late to see the sun, right? The sunrise, and when he does get caught, there's like, it goes back to the elders of the bat colony, like, oh, you shouldn't have done this. What I appreciate about this one is that the elders aren't all exclusive dicks. Like usually when you go into like, right. What I'm talking about, like movies like this, the elders like, he broke the law, he must be. But there's that one main elder who's like, hey, he's just a kid. Like, these things kind of happen. Like, what did the sun look like? It was nice, wasn't it? You know what I mean? It was like, oh, okay. So they're actually,
you broke the rules. You have to slap on their wrist. Yeah, like I've been there before. There's shades to each character. Each character seems developed, even though they're animals. Like everyone, you can kind of place to their motivations. Especially when we get to the other bats, I was like, good on them. These are proper villains. Yeah. Like the motivation makes sense, and then the way that they go about the things that they were doing was just to be doing chef's kiss, because I really enjoyed the amount of adversity that Shade and his little furry friend had to find.
Marina.
Going through all of this, right? Because they're often a victim of circumstance and just kind of one stroke behind what's actually happening, and that ends up they either have to learn from each other or save each other, which is a total 90s trope for all those movies that we love, right? Like it's your best friend that got you out of that. Atreyu!
Goth and Throb. Imagine your buddy's name is Throb.
Yeah, but you can see that happening. That's such a like college name. It's like, oh, it's a Throb. Why do they call you Throb?
It's like Gaston and what's his buddy's name?
I don't know. What is the little guy's name?
The Pew or whatever. What's his name?
Is that his name?
Something like that.
You better fact check yourself.
But it's dope. It's dope because there's like there's not like one bad guy. There's all these different adversaries, and they're
Mhm.
all kind of different levels of
Sh-
adversarial.
Shades of Grey.
Yeah, but and some of them are like minor threats, and some of them are kind of just threats that are in the way of this current moment, and then other ones are like constant threats, and
Yeah.
some are
And then
just
some,
friendly, and some are
that's what I was
friendly,
gonna say.
right?
Some are not threats, but because these two characters, it's the first time that they're kind of seeing the world, they have to approach things differently. So they're kind of, and again, I love the arc that you get from Shade because Shade is a completely different bat from
Yeah,
first couple of pages to the end pages, right? So you can feel the love that the writer put into these characters and understanding that each adversity and obstacle is going to build a better hero towards the end, right? So, um,
another thing I really loved is how like some of the bats were tagged.
right,
They have the metal tags on them, which happens in real life too, where people will tag them for whatever reason and send them back out in the wild. Every colony of bat and every group of animals all had their own theories about what the
what
tags
it
were.
is,
I
yeah, and
love
some
that. So that was
some
so
was a
cool.
curse and some was a chosen. Like it was
Yeah,
complete religious ideologies,
yeah,
like imprinted. And again, to piggyback on what you're
really
saying,
cool.
I love the lore on that, right? Because we get a lot of lore in the beginning about Frida, like the god that they
Mhm.
believe into, and this migration going to her means she's going to bring us the sun, kind of stuff. And I was like, yes, like from the moment the book starts, it's beautiful too, right? Like this is
Yeah.
not.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I can't say it's something where the artwork completely matches the writing, and they're both elevated by each other, but they're both good in themselves. That you can't avoid the other, and it's nothing that they're not trying to reinvent the wheel or add more kind of stylistic flares to like the characters or the look or the art style. It's a very simple paneled page, but I love what the artist does with movement. I'm
Mhm.
constantly moving down the page, moving through the page, moving and following the characters. The line work and the amount of like swifts and like you can see flight happen, you can see rainstorms happen, you can see when a gust of wind happens, when lightning storms happen, and all of those are a specific line set and a way that the artist used to curve it or harden it and help bring even more emotion to it. Like even when he gets caught in the storm and he's flipping out and flying all
Really
over the
cool. Yeah.
place and he screams out mom, like you get all of that from the artwork. So it's so beautiful. It's rival to how great the story is, right? And I think that's the perfect pairing when the art matches the writing
Yeah.
and they're both kind of undeniable.
And the bats all look really different. It's
Mhm.
pretty cool. You can tell who a bat. The only time I ever had confusion was between him and his mom because they look similar,
Right.
but they're a slightly different shade of blue. But any other bat, like the elders, all look distinct. Even the bats they meet in the wild look different. The
Yeah.
owls are super intimidating. Like
Mhm.
they make the owls look so regal and like
the
scary.
the rats look so dirty, but
Yeah,
so like
yeah,
mutant grotesque. It was a little bit like Rat King too, right? It had some like
it was. Yeah,
TMNT for me to it. The difference that they meet the tag bats to Throb and
goth.
Goth, like, and Throb and Goth look like they've been
Yeah,
in a lab being tested on constantly, right? Um, yeah, there's so much personality to it. All the settings are amazing. The different ways that they found places for these bats to kind of go through and hit on a map to get to this end result. Some places that you wouldn't think, but some are like obviously obvious, right? Like going through forests and different trees and stuff.
yeah,
But they find the farmhouse, when they find the steeple and the
yeah.
gargoyle, how all that works was amazing.
Yeah, they go to like two different cities. There's snowy plains, so the weather's changing, like you're saying,
Right?
constantly. It's snowy, it's raining, it's windy, it's calm, it's daytime, it's nighttime. Because these bats have to travel a day sometimes too. So like, oh,
Yes.
we gotta look out for owls on top of everything else.
It's ethereal too. There's moments when they're like talking about the great beyond, and then it does like a space thing, and like certain bats' wings will glow and like electrify. Like they run the gambit. Like this is a great sort of tool if you want to learn as many different art stylings for one character in one. Like they give you the whole radiant of like this what he looks monochromatic. This what he looks like in wintertime. This what he's going to look like if it's raining. Like how Shade gets to travel through so many different iterations to help his character grow and the story progress is kind of unfathomable, right? Like it's been a while where I think we've both been satisfied with a story so simple, but like I remember us both saying initially like, "Oh, it's gonna be a long one," but then we didn't say anything past that other than like done, done, right? Like
Mhm.
I whipped through this pretty fast, and then went back to like my favorite parts to check out how it looked again, right?
You know, I just realized I was listening to you, but um, there is a TV series of this, a cartoon. It was
Huh.
2003. I didn't know that. I just found this out now because I was looking up Kenneth Oppel because I knew he was Canadian, the author. So I was looking him up,
Right.
and I was like, and I saw there was a an animated show for it,
How
fantasy show.
many episodes?
One
I'm assuming
season,
it only went one season. Yeah.
13 episodes, one season.
What network got it?
It says it's a 2003 Filipino Canadian animated series.
So do you think Marina got Filipino voice casting?
I don't know. No, it was Teletoon. It was Teletoon.
There you go. That's the one.
Teletoon. Marina is voiced by Sharon Alexander. Shade is voiced by Bill Switzer.
So we instantly found something that we're probably gonna go check out.
Now we have to.
I mean, the
Now we
book's
have to.
really good.
Yeah.
There's hardly any humans in it. There's like a hand and like the back of a head, which is insane.
I love that. Yes, there's not. You're right. There's like there's no humans in it really. There's no faces.
No faces, correct.
Yeah.
And it wasn't kind of a looming threat, which what I keep forgetting the name of Wix's story. Scurry is like Scurry eventually
That,
made
hold on
humans.
before you fit, that name is so hard to remember for some reason. Scurry. I don't know
Scurry.
why. Go ahead. Sorry.
Scurry kind of made humans the end all to be all final boss. And like that's the looming threat. Where in Silverwing, humans exist, but we don't trust them. Like they kind of fucked us up, and we don't. There's a little flashbacks too, right? Like there's a couple times where they show bats getting catched in nets, and you see a hand come in. But that's about it. It's just like we don't know what they're doing to us, but we don't like them. So what they've done to us, we don't like, right? And I like that. This is a story that does not need human hands. It's so much more powerful from the animal's perspective, especially with again the lore that they built in, right?
Mhm.
The god that Goth believes in is completely different than the god that Silverwing believes in. The god
Yeah.
that Silverwing believes in is completely different than the god that Marina believes in. Like, I like the fact that there's so many different ideologies, essentially religions, and they're so devout in what little that they know. This is the only thing that they can kind of pass on and kind of share.
Mhm.
And that becomes kind of a little bit of contention when they all meet up of like, no, our God says this is going to be like this. Like, no, don't listen to that. Come to the jungles with us. Like, our
Yeah.
God will take care of you and make bats like the best, right? So I love those little touches of that's basically a human condition. Like, you meet somebody from a different culture and like, okay, like, so what God do you like? Because my
Yeah.
God,
Yeah. My God thinks this.
yeah.
Your God believes that. You know what? You're not welcome here anymore. I think is really dope. And Marina, for example, she's outcast from her own colony because of
Mhm.
the tag. Yet in Shade's colony, it's like, no, you're
Yeah, we
cool with
don't,
that.
but
Okay.
like, even the tags become a whole point of like its own storyline because the
Oh,
one thing happens with them, and then
so
another thing
cool.
happens with them, and then a third thing happens with them. I was like, well done, because I thought it was just going to be a throwaway thing that could potentially keep them separated, and it ended up uniting them in such a brilliant way. Right?
Yeah.
I can't say there's a lot of action in this, but those action scenes that do happen are so uh, focused and memorable because they're so few and far. Right? There's pacing and there's movement and there's things to enjoy, but when like a fight's breaking down, like you have to pay attention because it's literally a threat to their like every run in that they had with a villain or an obstacle, it was life or death for those bats.
Yeah.
It was awesome, right? The stakes were always there, and that's not always, especially if you're reading like superhero comic books. Stakes is not really a thing, especially if they're not going to die.
Yeah.
Like, oh, in a month they'll be back, right?
Nobody
Yeah,
ever dies. Yeah.
right. So like, again, another thing, another feather in the hat for this book because it understood like this is it for some of these characters. Like not every character that you meet is making it to the finish line. And there's a moment where you're like, oh no!
And you could see the like a reality where it's like they take Shade out and Marina carries a torch, right?
Yep.
Or vice versa. You can see, Marina playing her part and Shade dying, and maybe one of those things happens, maybe it doesn't. We're not going to tell you, but
And the world's so
the
strong that
threat's there.
you could also see them picking up another bat and you'd be like, yeah, I'll follow this, bro. Sure, no problem.
Yep.
They know really how each character works in this world, and more than anything, they understand this world. And once you understand your world, I feel you can drop anybody. Like we could have followed the brother of the king rat, who has his own
What
little
was his
wings
name?
thing.
I didn't write his name down, but he was cool.
It was funny, and like his whole backstories, and then he's like, "We're kind of cousins," and I was like, I would have loved reading like an issue of
Well, yeah,
like him
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
trying out, right? So there's a lot to really love about this. So much so that Coke and I keep censoring ourselves because we really want to talk about like the scene that we love the most, kind of stuff. And those are our spoilers. But anything more you want to add to this?
I don't know, man. Like,
It's good.
because unless we get into spoilers, because like you were saying, the whole thing with the tags, how it all
Yeah,
culminates and comes together, I was like,
that's
that's
genius.
so cool. And
That's
you
genius.
like you knew what was going to happen when they get to the barn, right? I had an idea. I was like, okay, he's going to get all them.
Yep.
But what it went from there was,
Yeah.
yeah, that was cool. That was really, really
The
cool.
throb mislead really got me when they're all
Mm.
hanging out and he does something and she's like, "Oh no!" And I was like, "Wow!" Like I thought they were so, but that's how invested I was in these pages. Like it really sucked me in, and I was really rewarded. And again, we talk about the ending, not talking about the ending because this story seems like a free fall, and the more you read, the deeper in the story, he's falling faster, right? Shade, and in terms of like just movements to get to the target. That at a certain point, like you don't know if there's enough like story left for them to actually make the landing. And he does. Like there's this weird sort of like pull up moment where you kind of don't have to hold your breath anymore. The worst of it's behind them, even
Mhm.
though in amazing comic language, you see that little rise from up there. And you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that could be a problem, but it was such a rewarding ending because they had really put them through the ringer, and I'm happy that we didn't get the I don't know the R-rated ending, which like maybe both of them don't show up. Like something doesn't
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
Like they're that close. Like they miss
No,
out on it. Or,
no, it's a happy ending, sort of, because it's like it's very, like you said, it's very 90s Disney in a way
yeah.
that's not scared. It's not afraid to be scary and to
Oh.
be intense and to have stakes, but like it usually works out in the end. And this one it kind of does somewhat. I was gonna say something else now I forget, but
I was gonna say not early 80s Disney where they would kill the mother
no, yeah,
immediately
yeah.
and then they just all right, we're in it now, guys.
Is there anything you didn't like about this?
Um,
Because I asking because there's a couple of things I thought were a little bit strange. Like I think the pacing,
maybe
as much as I love this book, I think the pacing is a little weird sometimes. Like there were parts where you thought they were going to kind of dwell a bit more, and it was kind of like,
sure.
that's like Shade and Marina go through this whole like they have differing opinions once in a
Hmm.
while,
Right.
and it's just like I want to go this way, I want to go that way, or I think this and you think that, and then it's
Hmm.
just like in 5 minutes, like you know what, let's just not do that. And it's like, okay, cool, I'm sorry, I forgive you, and it
Yeah,
just keeps going. It's like that's a little brief, and then in the beginning, the whole
that didn't bug
the
me as much for
it didn't
me.
bug me. No, no, I'm trying. I'm nitpicking.
Yeah,
It didn't bug me.
and
Yeah,
the way I interpreted it was just like they both realized that those little things didn't matter, right? Like
yeah,
they start
exactly.
off in
Yeah,
competition of like who can eat the most mosquitoes, and they try to eat a thousand fast, and they both do it, right? And they get back to the branch and like start hanging out. They're like, and you could see them like engorged and like their bellies are full and like fat. And, like, why do we do that? I was like, I don't know. Like already they learned like our hubris isn't going to be the smartest thing here. So those little moments where they couldn't decide, they're just like, you know what? I'm just going to support it. Whatever happens, happens, and it
yeah.
happens
No, they have a very mature relationship, even
quick.
though they just even yeah quick, even
Yeah,
though they just met.
yeah,
Like when Throb and Goth come into it, and Shade starts leaning more towards being like Throb than
yeah.
being like Marina.
And,
You can see what's going on, and then he's like, "Oh, you know what? My bad." And she's like, "Okay, cool." Like that's how you and I would be, but
right.
we know each other for a long time. So you someone you just met, it's like,
I would say it's under circumstances, right? They're both
mhm,
this both kind of turned into dire circumstances. Like they're trying to get back to this pack. Like this whole migration to find where they're going is of the utmost to Silverwing. That Marina ends up picking it up. Like she was kind of happy just chilling, and then she's like, "All right, fuck it, I'll go for it." Right, and then it turns into like this needs to be the thing. If we don't find where we're going, like all of this was for naught, right?
yeah,
So I can see them bonding real fast on that, especially with them going through the same sort of obstacles at the same time, and with all of them being so uh life or death. Like you're gonna lean on the people that you make it through life and death stuff with. So
Yeah, no, I don't really care. Like, it didn't take me or anything. I'm looking for I'm just looking, just for argument's sake. I'm looking for things to.
Maybe I'll say the plan that he had with Throb and Marina and the whole like this is how we're gonna get out of that. That was kind of super fast, especially we were building to this big face off.
Yeah, yeah,
And he
yeah,
turned into like the strategic genius. I was like, all right, like you had a lot of things working for you immediately, right? Like eat this. It's like, yeah, but I ate this, and I was like,
right,
did you? Because it looked
yeah,
like you ate that, right? There's a whole this veganism kind of versus carnivores kind of thing that
yeah,
was hilarious.
yeah,
And then the little line thing, like we eat bugs, and they show them eating bugs, and they're all happy and everything. But by that point, I'm already invested in all these characters.
yeah,
I really
exactly.
just want
Yeah,
to see them succeed, and it would have to be him. Like by process of elimination, like he's got to be the leader. Like he's bred to be the symbol of this world until we find a next issue, right? Because what potentially that next issue was going to be was the search for the next, right? Like there's this whole
mm,
little nugget storyline of like, oh, this person's still alive, and they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, cool, right? And I thought that was gonna somehow wrap up or bookend this story, right? I thought that person was gonna come and do something, save the day, sort of, or just reveal themselves, right? And they're like, no, no, no,
oh yeah, yeah,
that's another adventure. I was like, good on you guys, like way to pull the final punch, right? You'd given me so many characters and so many sort of adventures for you to throw in this weighted character that would have had all this emotional resonance and connection would have been heavy. I would have been mad, but that was what I was expecting. So the fact that I didn't get it and you kind of tease that, like, hey, if we get more money, we can write about that. I really enjoyed that, right?
which is
So
good because it didn't feel like a hard cliffhanger. It was kind of like, okay, this
no,
story is done. If you want
done.
more, this is what we're going to be doing next. And it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
cool. I'm going to come back
I
for
like
that.
that one.
Or you know what? I'm
Correct.
good. I like that a lot. It was, yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yep.
Um, we rate these on a good or bad basis. Boom being good, bad being bad. Whoosh for what did I just read?
I'd like to hear you say whoosh. I'd like to hear you say whoosh to this. Like, what was this?
No, I
I
love
could
this.
I could
I knew.
I could only say whoosh if I was describing the flight sounds of all these bats. Yeah, this is amazing boom. Like I'm so glad we stumbled into this bad boy.
Boom.
Yeah, I can't recommend this enough for anybody who wants who likes like adventure. It wasn't even childish either. It's just kind of like
But it takes you back to that, right? Like because the characters are children, you can't help, and you can see that. You can see the difference between a child bat and a grown ass elder bat, right? And now we're gonna go chase down this cartoon. So fucking A.
yeah, we are. I'm looking at it right now. 13 episodes. It looks quite a bit more detailed than the comics. There's things that go around like there's wolves and bears in this and stuff. And
So it actually turns scurry.
what's that?
It actually turns scurry. Wolves and bears.
Possibly, yeah,
Wolves
yeah,
and
yeah,
bears.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But there's Gotham's Robbed right in there, and it looks like it's just the first book. Yeah, 2003, man. That's crazy.
Whoa.
Who knew?